not Hartford, Sprague. So this is going to be, we're going to be on shortly. That's what I'm saying.
We're starting in case it's public comment.
I hear none. So we will close the public comment period and move on to the next item on the agenda.
No.
And the next item is the approval of the
They can't hear me.
minutes. The minutes from January the 13th regular meeting.
Please.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
How about a second? Thank you.
No.
Because there's two comments.
Any discussion?
They're going to ask a question, right?
Yeah.
I hear none. I do have one correction that I saw in my minutes. Sorry. Christine, I'm sorry, my head was down, I didn't see it. I do have one. I have one correction to make on page 3. The first full paragraph, it looks like there's a little cliffhanger where a thought was left, and it says Mr. Chaplinsky, and it's by itself, so it's fragmented. I'm asking that gets removed. And Christine, any other adjustments?
Well, I just want to make sure, and if either Julian or Kim could refresh my recollection, I serve as a treasurer designate on all the subcommittees as well as the full MARB, so sometimes the concepts kind of morph together. I want to make sure that we are memorializing our discussions around the pension structuring in West Haven. And I recall there was a fairly robust discussion around that. Was that at the subcommittee meeting or was that the full council? Subcommittee, okay. Yeah. Well, there's been progress since then, so I'll be happy to report on that at the appropriate time, but thank you. I just wanted to make sure that our minutes are reflected. It is the consistent refrain, kind of the observations of many of the members of the MARB around the frequency with which we ask some of the same questions. So I do think that kind of capturing that will be important because the public is very interested not only in the work of this council and of the board and the committees, but also in the progress that's being made. I don't think we want to see these towns under MARB oversight forever. So thank you. No other comments on that.
Thank you, Christine. Any other discussion on the minutes from January the 13th? Hello, Matt, I see that you're with us.
Good morning.
All right, I hear no other comments. I will ask for the change that is noted, and Julian, can I ask you for the roll call vote, please?
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Luciano?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mr. Egan?
I just got on the call.
Mr. Brockman?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
And Ms. Kempson?
Yes.
Are there any board members that joined the meeting that I did not mention? Then that's everybody.
All right, thank you. The minutes have been approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from January the 27th. It is a special MARB meeting that took place to address one contract. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Sal. Second, please.
Okay.
Okay. Christine, I did see your hand, but I didn't hear your voice. Sorry, thank you. Any discussion? I hear none. Let's move on to a roll call vote, please.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Luciano?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Abstain.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Mr. Brockman?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
And Ms. Kempson?
Aye.
Are there any board members I missed? That's everybody.
Thank you, Julian. The minutes have been approved. All right, next item on the agenda is the Town of Sprague. And included in your packet, there is actually no subcommittee yet. I'm going to ask Julian to give you a brief comments on some of the work that we have done with them, even though there has not been a meeting.
Right, just for planning purposes, we've worked out a budget adoption, a calendar that should work well with the subcommittee and MARB review process, hopefully without a time crunch at the end of the process, where we've had to schedule sometimes multiple special meetings at the end. So this would require that a proposed budget from the Board of Finance be submitted in time for the subcommittee to review at the March 24th subcommittee meeting. And then the process unfolds from there. A slightly different sort of set of steps than the other municipalities we work with, but I've spoken with the first selectman, Ms. Blanchard, about this, and it seems like we could accommodate this. It moves the proposed budget up by about a month, so hopefully that will sort of ease the time crunch. And then the town has also notified me that they're anticipating having their audit completed by the end of this month and submitted by the end of this month. And did you want to add anything to that, Ms. Blanchard?
No. This is that we're expecting it to be completed by the end of the month.
Okay. And then Les, I think you do have an update on the grant list, which was recently completed. Okay, I'll let you do that.
Okay, the SSO recently completed the grant list, and it does appear that there is going to be growth of nearly 5%, which is quite a good amount for us. Some of that, a lot of that is probably from the organically transfer of motor vehicles from the town they were previously being brought into Sprague. So that's going to increase our motor vehicle and personal property. That's what the majority of the growth was.
That's good news. That's very good news. All right. Then go ahead.
We do have a subcommittee with, we do have a Sprague subcommittee meeting this month on the 24th, and we would take our first look at the Board of Ed budget if it's available and ready to be distributed.
And I believe that will be.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe they voted on it last night.
Well, very good. All right, the next item on the agenda is to review and to discuss the monthly financials for the month of December for selectmen.
So the revenues at the end of December were year over year pretty much the same. Expenditures were marginally higher, but not by anything noticeable. The other revenue sources, the fees, permits, and interest income, that sort of thing, are down quite a bit from the previous year, but the reason for that would be that in the previous year, we had transferred in capitalized interest from the GEO bond, and then there were multiple COVID reimbursements that was transferred in, so that was a change there. As far as expenditures go, most of them are right on range, but we do have a few that are higher. Town council is higher due to an ongoing legal case. Town repairs and renovations is quite a bit higher due to a sewer issue in the building. So those are just a couple of the things to comment on. And then also, just as an update, in the budget and in the 5-year plan, the budgeted surplus for this year was $178,000. We're estimating that that's probably going to be closer to $150,000 at this point, barring any other changes due to some of those other expenditures.
Couple of questions.
Yep.
First Selectman. Cash flow, are we still fine with cash flow and, the accounts payable invoicing aged?
Yes, we are still, doing well with cash flow, and as far as the aging of invoices, everything is current on both, the board bedside and the, house.
Thank you. Is there anything alarming on the litigation case that we should be aware of that could actually be potential, that could hurt your operating budget?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. That's it, what, yeah.
I have a quick question. It's a fairly modest amount, but I was curious to know about the state, the pilot payment that was kind of double what was expected. Can you just provide some insights there? Yeah, I'm looking at, let's see, oh, I just lost it. It looked like it was up by over 200% of what was budgeted, and I'm just curious to know what accounted for that. It's on page, the first page,
I do see it, I see it, yes.
Kate Grant.
I'm not sure on that. I'm gonna have to pull that and look at that to see what was coded into that.
If you're still on the pilot payment, recall that in the current budget year, the formula change had really dramatic impact on both the city of Hartford and the city of West Haven.
We did not know the dollar amounts prior to the budget. Got it.
Gotcha. Okay, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sprague? And
Yeah,
is,
this is Tom.
oh, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I have a question, Kim. In terms of the Board of Education, is there any additional information on projected expenditures for the Board of Ed? I think your report is showing them exactly on budget.
There was a difference in timing of the two. The Board of Ed budget actually has 82,000 in a plus. Is Superintendent on the line?
He is.
Hello.
How are you?
Great, how about yourself?
Very well, thank you. We anticipate that surplus on our side growing a little bit, to about 1.25%, a little bit over $100,000. We're booking, because we're just basically midway through the year, we're booking very conservatively. So it has a possibility to grow a little bit.
Thank you. I think it's timing, Tom, about the information going to the city for the line items, but the detail in the Board of Ed, because we did get that information.
Gotcha,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, so it's not reflected that the actual bottom line would increase based on the Board of Ed numbers.
Right.
Good question. Any other questions? All right, I hear none. Superintendent, we would look forward to hearing about your budget in the upcoming meeting. Are you ready for that?
Of course.
All right.
Very more than happy to walk you through our budget.
I hope that that your meetings that you just recently had went smoothly for you.
They have, the board approved our budget, Board Ed, at approximately 1.6% increase. If you look at the proposed governor's budget, our ECS will go up a little bit on both years going forward.
Very
It
good.
should help.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sprague. We will move on to, I have one other question, and for the Town of Sprague, did you report in on your CRS funds into the OPM portal that is due on February the 15th?
We're almost done with that. It will be in before the 15th.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the Town of West Haven.
You are no longer muted.
Is an update from Julian on our subcommittee. I'm going to ask him to provide an overview of that meeting. Julian?
Yes, the January subcommittee meeting was quite similar in content to the December meeting. We had a brief update on the Resnick audit, and then the bulk of the meeting was really looking at the various action plans and the corrective action plan, all of which are intended to address, either requirements in the FY21 memorandum of agreement or prior year audit findings. And so these plans are at various stages of development. We have two that are being implemented, one for purchasing and accounts payable, the other for information technology, one that's nearing finalized status for human resources or personnel, which is an outcome of the HR study that was done a couple of years back. And then there are at least two that are pending right now. One, which was asked for, is a comprehensive plan for identifying and recruiting and filling current vacancies or any new positions or restructured positions, so that there's a comprehensive timeline that steps out when these positions will be defined, if they need new job descriptions, when they'll be posted, what the approximate hire dates would be, how they're going to be funded, whether it's out of current year resources or need to be included in next year's budget, so a complete plan for staffing. The second one, as Michelle alluded to earlier, is a full plan and timeline for addressing two findings, I believe one for each of the last two fiscal years, related to pension investment and having the city of its arms around pension investment services and acquiring advisory services, and then looking at the possibility of either consolidating advisory services and potentially consolidating the investments themselves. And so that's a whole other initiative that really hasn't started yet and needs to be fleshed out. The other, one other point is wanting to get in on the information technology plans, that we'll also be looking for a comprehensive itemization of the resources that are needed for investing in the remaining upgrades that were outlined in that action plan. So those, what are the investments that are required, where are those resources coming from, whether, again, it's from existing budget, or the grant resources, or next year's budget, and how that will unfold. And then lastly, one of the discussion points of the meeting was that as the city develops these plans, implements them, to the extent that they involve developing new policies and procedures that are designed to address deficiencies or internal control issues, we will be having each of those go under some sort of external review, either with the city's current auditor, if they're able to do that and still maintain necessary independence, or seeking some other external review, but that will be a key part of that whole process. And then lastly, we received a brief update on the status of planning for the use of ARPA funds and the a draft plan has yet to be developed and submitted to City Council. If the city would like to elaborate on that, that completes my update. Our next meeting is February 22nd.
Thank you, Julian. City, do you want to provide any update on the subcommittee?
Michael, do you want to?
And just a couple of things, if I could. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just haven't talked to Jillian in a couple of weeks, but we have initiated plans on the fire pension issue. One of the things we're almost completed with is the RFP for the investment advisory services, and when that's completed, hopefully either tomorrow or Monday, I'm going to send a copy to Jillian to look at. So that'll be the first step in getting at least the key part of this whole issue started. And then what we have is we're in the process of developing an action plan devoted to just the to just the pension, both fire, police, and city employees. That will be presented at the February subcommittee meeting. So hopefully we'll have the advisory services RFP on the street by then, and then we'll also be able to walk the subcommittee through our outline of how we think we should proceed to advance this. And then the other thing I did want to mention, and Julian touched on it just a little bit, is at the February subcommittee meeting, Pam Alvina, who's the new personnel director, is going to be presenting her action plan, and concurrent with that, and I see the mayor shaking her head, she probably has more information on this than I do. Separate and apart from this, she has an action plan that lists all of the key vacancies that we've been working on for the last few months, those that have been filled, those that are in the process of being filled, and those that she hopes to be filling in the near future. The good news is that since she's come on board, she's worked very diligently to not only get the postings out quickly, but also to significantly increase the recruitment efforts by using a lot of other resources for posting positions. One of the challenges she's had is that she's attracted candidates. In some cases, they just didn't meet the expectations that various staff had, and unfortunately we have to go out and then re-advertise. So those two things will be pretty well explained and at the February meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that they are being attended to, and we'll have a full vetting of those in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Excuse me, Michael, I just want to get clarity on your comments about the staffing, and you said it has to go back out again. Are you stating that we didn't get qualified candidates that applied for specific positions and you have to go out? Or are you stating that the qualified individuals that were being interviewed, that the expectations of the job description versus the city were different?
No, I think it's the latter, and I'll leave it to Pam to explain further, but the biggest challenge we've had is finding a qualified human resources generalist. She's had, I think, 2 or 3 interviews, and then she had second interviews with each of the candidates. So it wasn't a situation that you had indicated, the fit or anything like that. It was that they really didn't meet the needs of the job description, which is unfortunate because she's been successful in filling a lot of other vacancies, but she can't fill in her mind, the most important one, which is the generalist in her office. And she'll speak to that, but hopefully by the time she appears, she might have a successful outcome and have a candidate.
The hiring process right now is very challenging. I can definitely comment on that in my own area of finance.
We've reached out to Human Resources consulting company that worked with us last year, a couple of days ago, and they are also doing whatever they can to find candidates, even if it's just short-term, because she needs help in this area very, very quickly, and even if it's an interim, she's open to anyone. So hopefully they'll be able to at least come up with somebody we can hire just on a short-term basis until she's able to fill the job permanently. So she's trying a number of different avenues, but yeah, it's hard.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. Mike, do you know how many people applied for the job and where the advertising was?
No,
Advertising.
Pat, I don't, but I'll have P&B prepared to provide all that information on each of the jobs when she comes here in 2 weeks, but I don't have that level of detail, I'm sorry.
One other question, Michael.
Yes?
Regarding the RFP, you stated it was for the advisory services.
Yes.
Is it also including the investment management? Is it 2 RFPs, or are you planning or 1 RFP that will incorporate the both? Because it should be 2 separate individuals, 2 separate companies doing both, those roles.
Yeah, and that's clearly understood, and that's always been understood.
Okay.
And this is preliminary, I talked to Julian, I have to talk to the mayor and Frank, but the idea is to get the investment advisor on board and then have the investment advisor work with us to design what is best suited for the city in terms of, allocation of assets and so on, so that we can develop a RFP that mirrors what we really need, and then have that advisor basically act as the consultant who helps us find those managers that are best suited for the needs of the city. So that manager RFP won't be done for some time, and it won't be done without the input of the advisor.
Very good, thank you. Christine, is this the area that you wanted to comment on?
I think that we're tracking and documenting how it is the city is sharing with us the progress on how they plan to more fully analyze these issues. And so, yes, I'm cautiously optimistic that we can really get to a place where there's real resolution. Many of the issues that we discussed with the city officials, they kind of just have a perpetual life. But I believe there is a finite endpoint where we can get to an answer, and I look forward to that.
Thank you for your help with this too, Christine.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Christine, I am going to be in touch with you, because the challenge for us is going to be convincing the powers to be, which are the respective commissions, the fire commissions, of the benefit of doing this, since it's going to require their assent as well as the mayor's. And I think that's where we're going to need somebody with some compelling evidence and information beyond anything that I think we're going to be able to convey. So that's where the real challenge will be. And so,
Michael,
please stay on the line on that one.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're getting background noise. Michael, the fire districts will need an education, and if we bring people in front of them and they understand what's forth, they can be successful at this. They have implemented the tri-districts, and so in that tri-district contract between all 3 of those districts, that is there, and it does state within that they would explore the combination of the investments, so for the pension. So I just think that, where people get reluctant is because they're not educated, and they need to be educated, and they need to be brought along. I think if that happens, I think that it will become successful.
And I hope...
And I would just add...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to acknowledge that one of the realities of how each of the municipalities in Connecticut operates, there's this fierce sense of independence. of town rule, of how it is, towns and these fire districts, want to, ensure the success of their plans. We understand that, but there are so many examples of other municipalities and districts who have been able to lean in on economies of scale, who've been able to kind of take a fresh look at the way in which their pension assets are run. And it really has less to do with control and more to do with making sure that you're managing your assets as aggressively as possible. So anyway, I look forward to the discussion. And there are lots of, there are lots of resources at the state level, but certainly at the municipal level as well. So happy to support that ongoing dialogue.
Thank you. And Kim, I share your feelings about their willingness to listen, and they demonstrated that to us last year when we really started to get involved with them. And they're open.
That's my point.
They're open to change. It's just that, I just want to make sure that when we have this one opportunity, that it's very compelling and convincing, and hopefully it will be, and we look forward to that. And excuse me, one thing you said last week, Christine, is fiduciary responsibility, and that's pretty significant, and that needs to be underscored, because while somebody feels as though they're doing the right thing, in their mind it might be, but it is not necessarily consistent with meeting the fiduciary responsibility, and that's an important thing to convey, and I haven't forgotten that.
This all needs to be incorporated, all right?
Yep.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm
On
going
the
to,
upper side,
I was going to actually just report out as far as the positions and the information that I've gathered. So the procurement director, the offer is extended to a final candidate. We are awaiting a response that we do expect very quickly. And that is going to begin immediately as soon as notice is given. And it's going to be funded through the excess money that we had because of pilot, once we had crafted our budget, and then when they rearranged the formula. So we do have the funds to cover that position. The tax manager, the offer has been extended to a final candidate, and again, we are awaiting response. And that also is going to, that is in the budget right now. That was an existing position that the person is leaving, and we are filling that position. The junior financial analyst, the offer has been accepted by final candidate, awaiting start date from the candidate. Again, this one is also in the FY22 budget. We do have the funding. Sanitarian 1 for the health department, final candidate identified, background checks in progress. And again, it's funded in the budget. And then we go with the
I'm
HR.
sorry, I didn't hear that last position there.
That's okay. Right, Sanitarian 1, that's going to be in the health department. Final candidate identified, background checks in progress, and that is totally funded in FY22. Then the HR/personnel generalist, as you know, we've been having difficulty with that position, getting it filled. So interviews have been conducted, however, no final candidate has been selected, and the advertising continues. And again, that is funded in the FY22 budget. Assistant building officials, we have 2 vacancies, and advertising continues. CDA housing specialist, interviews are in process, and we have a potential strong candidate that has been identified. Purchasing specialist/buyer, position has been reposted, and we are going to continue to advertise that. Excess pilot funds, again, with the recalculation is what's paying for that, because that position was not in our budget, so that is funded. We're able to pay for it in FY22. Public works driver/laborer, advertising continues. Public works secretary, we have 2 internal applicants that have posted. We're awaiting the decision from the manager to interview. Water pollution control mechanic, position to be advertised. That one, I understand, just became vacant just shortly. And then water pollution control operator in training, advertising continues. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you.
Mayor, are you considering the third purchasing position?
We are. Now, again, I know that it was outlined that we were going to do the buyer, obviously the director, and then we were going to put an admin in there, I thought, to
Yes.
to go, so that would be a 681 position. So yes, we are, but we're trying to get the director on board first, and then we're going to go with, because that way that person can, be involved in the interviewing along with the city.
Very good, I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip that one. Were all of those purchasing positions approved by city council?
No,
I know you had a hold up there.
No.
there is still a holdup. There's a meeting on Monday night. I
Yes.
don't know if they've put it on the agenda or not. We are moving forward anyway because funding is available, and it is a crucial position.
Yes, crucial.
It is a crucial position. All of them. Okay.
You want to give it an update?
Oh, do we want to go to our?
Any other? Yep.
ARPA updates, we continue to make changes to the plan as new information comes in, whether it's meeting with people or meeting with different departments or outside people. I also have a town hall meeting scheduled for Tuesday night, February 15th, to discuss, to the public. We're advertising it because we'd like to get a decent group there to see if there's any different ideas that I don't have in the plan. And then, as I said, we're going to finish it up, and we will be releasing the plan within the next 6 weeks to the city council and to the MARB and to the public.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members before we move on?
Tim, before we move on, Steve Felsinger reached out to me. He's on the meeting but was having trouble being heard. So he wanted to be aware that he's on and that he wanted his vote recorded for the minutes in the affirmative for both. And he had some questions for the city of West Haven that he'll hold for the subcommittee meeting.
And I'll talk to him if you want.
Thanks.
Not right now.
Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is for me to provide you with an update on the Resnick audit. Julian had touched on it. Last month I had reported out on the status of it, that they needed to complete all of their work by the end of January, or they would collide with their regular audit that is going on. I can tell you that Resnick they did not complete their field work by the end of January, and that they were back on site again this week. They did collide with their the city's internal auditor, their external auditors. They were there at the same time. So I can state that Resnick still they've received their documentation. However, there is a struggle with the documentation not tying to payroll records, not tying exactly into the reported items that were initially reported for the CRF report. And Cohen has asked the city to complete a reconciliation to tie the report to the actual reportable. I think that we'll probably have a follow-up meeting on that and make sure that there is clarity of what needs to be done. We do not want to pay Resnick to do reconciliation. They're a large cost to us, and this stuff should be readily available, but I understand that it is a struggle for the city and has been an ongoing struggle for the city to get the information on this.
Why is that?
Well, I think that we have learned that, with the vacancies of staff and the policies, the lack of policies and procedures, and probably what you're hearing all along, which has been noted in the audits, are the items that still is going to take time for them to get up and fix. And I know that they've been working on this, but I think staffing issue has been a very large part of this. And again, we all know that of the allegations that are out there of what transpired at the city. Any comments from the city?
Yeah, I would say that also a piece of that, Mr. Egan, is that the payroll records also include the Center District and West Shore. So trying to get that information, since we do not control that payroll system, we don't control anything around those departments. So we were provided initial information as to employees that were paid overtime for COVID, for working COVID to cover people who were quarantined. Resnick did ask for copies of the payroll registers to ensure that people did actually get paid. Those payroll registers were provided, and now they want us to go back and pull out the pieces of that register that represent the numbers that were actually submitted. So it's a dissection process that we are trying to get through.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just wanted,
At this moment, until they have the documents and the field work is completed, we know that there will be an extension. And at this point, I do not have a date of what that extension is. We just learned of it. And until they have the documents, it will move the timeline. But we are not anticipating an extension in the contract at this moment. I can say that. The contract is ending on March 31st, so that will be dependent upon the city and providing that information. We wanted to have the report out before then.
all right, how do, I guess, when are we gonna take some action here to assure that, there's not things being paid that should be being paid?
We have an audit underway to make sure of that right now, and that information will come forward in their report. That's why we hired professionals to do that, who are qualified to do that. Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need an audit to know that, there was invoices submitted that were signed off on that were paid when they should have been. But I don't need an audit to tell me that. You know, maybe the audit's gonna find more than what's been found out already, but my question is how are, what's the assurance on our end that things aren't just being signed off on without being verified, justified, that these are payments that should exist?
I think that we've taken I think we have taken the proper measures in bringing the auditor in to do the deep dive of a forensic audit, to then come forth and let us know what they have learned, Pat. So I do think that we have done that. And that's the reason the Secretary asked for this, and for this to be done. So we just need to pen the outcome. What needs to happen is that, I think the painstaking part of it is that, we also know that the ADP system was a conversion this year during the same time while you have grant information, which is the CLS grant. So I don't know if part of that struggle is the differences between the systems and the system conversions, but there is still work to be done to get to that point.
Yeah, I understand all that, but what I'm talking about is invoices that get submitted, that get signed off on, that are paid, that there was actually, not proper, that was fraudulent. How do we know that there's not invoices? What was the failure in verifying those expenses? Right, because that, under the charter, is certainly vested in the chief financial officer to do, and that clearly wasn't done. You also run into things. Is there any other services? What's our review and discuss for contracts? 50,000, 100,000. What's the number?
100.
That's good.
Okay. So, obviously, there's a couple of these that we know about that far exceeded that. So have we put something in place that says if you are doing something, I guess, in this case, without a contract, like in the examples that we all know about, and now you're hitting these benchmarks, that you can't do that, it needs to come to us, because, I mean, that was essentially services that exceeded the $100,000 that was never brought to our attention per the statutory mandates. So what are we doing besides waiting for an auditor? That's what I want to know. Because we know there's big numbers out there, right? But how do we know that, when you have invoices for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, that someone is reviewing those? Because that's where the failure was.
Every single payment that comes to finance.
I don't know who's speaking.
I'm sorry, this is Frank.
Frank that is speaking.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Every single payment that comes to finance with a voucher on it is signed off by a department head. That signature indicates to finance that products were received, services were received, and the bill is okay to pay. Other than that, I do not have the bandwidth. Finance does not have the bandwidth, nor does any town, to scrutinize every single invoice after the individual or department responsible has signed off on it. Now, there was a breakdown because an individual of trust was signing off on things, and finance accepted that his signature meant that these were being reviewed and that they were accurate. Now, to your point going forward, that will be taken care of with the existence of a proper purchasing department. The purchasing director has been extended an offer. He hopefully will be in within the next 3 weeks, and at that point, procedures can be definitely put into place. Now, the city has also begun its upgrade around purchasing and procurement policies with the help of the consultant Wilma Petro. We have had meetings with all of the department heads to review what the changes in policies are, to walk them through that. We had a meeting yesterday with the police department, since they have unique requirements around purchasing. I can tell you it was a very productive discussion. We were able to assuage some of their fears. We were able to glean off of them some of the uniqueness around their procurement needs. So we are moving forward with this. As far as bills, the mayor's office is reviewing every invoice that comes up to us signed off by a department head over $5,000 to be, have a second set of eyes on it before it comes to me, and then my signature goes on the document authorizing accounts payable to actually pay the check.
Very good. Thank you, Frank. I think hold it, Patrick. Patrick, we have two people with other hands. Down. I'm sorry. They've been waiting.
Thank you. This is kind of a follow-up to what Pat Egan's point is, I believe, and that is, and I said this before, this has been an ongoing problem that should have been in place years ago. If you buy 4 tires before you pay the bill, you make sure you have 4 tires. So I don't understand, why that is so difficult, and I think that's Mr. Egan's point. Having an auditor go in will find out what other things have been paid for without actually receiving the products or the services. And that's great. But that point is there a procedure in place now that will verify that before you pay a bill, you got what you're paying for, either in services or products?
I'm sorry, yes, we have reached out to the departments. We have told them in no uncertain terms that they will be held liable for any bills that they have sent to us that are not accurate or reasonable to pay. Short of that, other than tripling the size of finance so that we can put one person in every department to scrutinize everything, I don't know what the answer is. At some point, accountability has to be with the departments.
And they need to be held accountable, and if not, then justice has to be served before they get terminated.
Exactly.
That's what has to happen.
Well, let me just finish up my point, and thank you, Sally, you're correct, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that it's like, we're waiting for the audit, great, we'll find out, I guess, to whatever degree, how deep it goes, what fund is appropriated and not correctly paid, but the problem comes is that if that's an issue with finance, the problem comes is that, one, I obviously wasn't always in the cases that at least everybody at this table is aware of, it wasn't department heads, right? Two, before there was an authorization before the council to have Representative DeMassa start signing these things, he was doing it prior, unless I missed that authorization. That was when his wife was getting paid for things. And three, the fact is at the end of the day is, I don't know how it gets discovered that, so let's just assume that a department head is doing the same thing that we know has been done already. So I don't know how it gets discovered unless, another reporter FOIA's documents and brings it to the city's attention. I don't know how it gets discovered that something fraudulent wasn't going on. And more ultimately, and if it's an issue with the ability of the Director of Finance to assure that any claim or charge or voucher or whatever it is against the town is proper, because that's his duty. Okay, that's his duty under the charter, and he's signed off on over $800,000 that at least is known that has been fraudulent. So I guess that's my quandary here, is that department heads signing off on things. We're just taking it for, I guess, it must be okay then, and until we find out they did something wrong, there's no other, hurdles for anybody to get. Once the department head green lights it, it's just signed off on thing. And that's a problem. One, it doesn't exist with current policy of the city of West Haven. And two, we don't know, we're looking at the big bills, right? Those are the ones that are with the big numbers, but the things for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, change orders, all these things that get submitted, we're assuming that what department heads are taking the time to vet through these things. I think that's a dangerous assumption, and I think it's an assumption that is already, I guess this board in the ass, because forget the federal funds.
Okay, Frank. Okay. Wait.
Please what?
I don't want you swearing on here.
What did I say?
I'm not going to repeat it. I do. Thank you, Pat. Christine is waiting. Christine is waiting, Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to.
Controls have to be put in place. We know that.
I apologize for swearing if I said I truly.
No, you're being disrespectful. I'm sorry.
I'd be disrespectful in what way?
I don't want swearing in these board meetings.
I just said if I swore, I apologize. I didn't mean to. I certainly didn't catch myself on swearing. So with that said, I apologize to the board if I swore. So to just finish my point, so I think that's the overall problem. We know obviously there's bills paid that were bad, and that the audit is going to pick that up.
It will.
But, the question is what are those controls that we put in place? How do we know it's not ongoing? If we're relying on other people.
That is the job of an auditor, and yes, the controls will be put in place, okay? Or further steps will be made, and that has already been mentioned as well by the secretary, okay? That is what this board will then make a decision on, once we get the outcome of that. Now, excuse me, Christine, it is your turn.
Thank you, Ms. Kempton, and I just want to kind of echo the comments of both Mr. Egan and Luciano, and to make abundantly clear that the objective of this audit is not only a retrospective look at how funds were expended, but an analysis of the current framework of financial controls in order to get at what Mr. Egan and Luciano are talking about, which is how can we be assured that these are not ongoing weaknesses in the city's financial control. I think everyone is clear that there is a prospective element of this review and a retrospective element of this review. And the reason why we're engaging in this exercise is in order to ensure that the misappropriation of city funds does not happen again, that we address the structural weaknesses. So I just want to be very, very clear. There's look back, there's the look forward, and we are not going to engage in this exercise to waste anybody's time. The objective here is to get at the root of the problem. I appreciate Mayor Rossi and the city officials who are endeavoring to give us assurance until we get that audit report, but you're right, Pat, there's like this interim period. We just have to hope that they are, the controls they put in place until we can get those specific recommendations. We hope those controls are adequate to stem the abuse. But everyone's on notice, everyone knows there's eyes on this, and we anxiously await the results of this audit to get at what Pat so immediately points out. So I agree with the concerns as well.
I agree entirely. And then once we have that, we will then be able to take action and make sure that things are moving forward. Thank you, Christine, for summing that up. I appreciate that. Any other questions on this agenda? We're in time. I do see a hand. Oh, Christine, your hand is still up. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the review and the discussion of some non-labor contracts. There is no action that is needed on the non-labor contracts, and it is for the affordable waste. Who is going to lead that discussion and bring us through those?
Attorney Tiernan's coming over.
Yeah. Lee Tiernan's coming over to discuss.
So good morning all. Hopefully you have the materials that Julian would have distributed concerning this contract. We only had the one bidder. We do need waste removed. We do want a contract. We've just discussed that. So the contract has been reviewed by an individual in my office who I brought in to organize the contracts and make sure that my office is also reviewing not only contract construction, but also keeping tabs on when bids are supposed to go out and when contracts expire. So there was only the one bidder, and as everybody knows, when China stopped processing plastic, recyclables went up. But what we like about this is that they were going to try to market to the best of their ability, and we share the savings on the recyclables. Waste is going up, and so we need to engage in this contract. In addition to that, I am not to disparage this particular hauler or to disparage the waste industry in general, but I have had conversations, and once the contract's in place, we'll have further conversations with law enforcement to see if there's any sort of colluding activities or activities that municipalities need to know about in terms of this waste collection area. But other than that, it is what it is. It is an increase from what we have, but we think we're securing a better price than we would otherwise get if we rebid it or waited even longer to secure the contract. So I am available for any questions.
Is there not other contractors in your area or other folks that would be interested, or was the advertisement just not in the local area?
So in 2018, I can tell you, we had 5 bidders and 4 withdrew at the day of the bid opening. We do have some concerns about this. We're only getting 1 bidder. I have discussed this with members of the FBI who I am required to engage with and have engaged with, and so this will be an area of concern and an area followed up on. This is not unique to waste management. The FBI and the Justice Department did conclude an investigation on collusion on a insulation contract pursuant to our high school, which we are negotiating reimbursement on. So collusion in public contracting is a problem, but I think the proper investigatory resources are attentive to it. And as I said, we have discussed this. I think it'll be fleshed out a little more, but in the meantime, we have, 55,000 plus residents. They put garbage on the curb and we got to haul it away. So that goes on, and we can't have a situation where we're just putting garbage on the curb and weeks and months go by and we just leave it. So we have to walk and chew gum at the same time here. We have to engage the contract, and then we have to pursue for our next go-round to make sure that we have a competitive sphere here, and I think to really ensure that, that's why I've engaged members of the law enforcement community. Again, not to disparage anybody in the waste management area.
You're not suggesting that you were the one who pursued it. It has nothing to do with the FBI investigation that's already underway, correct? And there's no worry with this particular contractor. And
No.
The MARB has no authority. We are just listening. We have no authority in taking action over this. It's an awareness.
No, it's just,
No.
so I've been involved in 2 bidding processes with waste, with our waste hauling, right? So the first one is what I explained, where bidders withdrew, and now I have a second one where I only have 1 bidder. So now I'm going to, have a discussion. We're going to do this contract. I have no reason to believe anything is untoward. I have no evidence that anything is untoward, but I'm going to have a conversation with, law enforcement to see if there's some area of investigation that needs to take place so that we have a more competitive sphere here. Or maybe it is what it is. Maybe the world of waste hauling is changing. We are also simultaneously pursuing to have a transfer station in one area in town. I'm foreclosing on a piece of property in order to help with that, and consulting with DEEP so that we have a good waste transfer station. And we're also looking at other areas where we might be able to make the recyclables, and we've already have an organics capacity at our transfer station, so organics hauling is already decreased in our city. So we're working simultaneously on other objectives. But in order to make sure we're getting as many bidders as possible, like I said, I think I'm at a point where I think it at least deserves a review by law enforcement, and maybe they review it and they say there's nothing to see here. But in the meantime, we need to engage in a waste hauling contract so that the city's waste is being properly attended to.
Knowing that you're having that discussion, one other question is, then do you have a clause where you can get out should any of this changes need to happen? You're asking for a 2-year plus 1.
Yes, if there was evidence involved in the collusion, the colluding party would have to pay restitution to the city. So, and that happened with the insulation collusion that the Justice Department investigated pursuant to the high school. So, I think
So that's included in the contract?
yeah.
All right, any questions from the MARB members? All right, then, thank you, Lee. We can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a review and discussion of the monthly financial statements.
Thank you, Ms. Kennison.
You're welcome.
You all have the financial report that was sent to you. We continue to monitor the revenues that are coming in as well as the expenditures. You can see that on page 2 of the report, the individual line items, movement up and down from the original budget. We are still maintaining that the property taxes will come in on budget. There is some indication that those numbers will come in a little higher than that, and that is based on the timing that you can see on page 3. By holding the budget, it would indicate that the taxes would be at roughly 63% of the year, which is slightly higher than the 5 years before that, which would suggest that the tax revenues, if timing holds, should come in a little higher than that. So as the year progresses, we may adjust that number going forward. From an expenditure side, from what I'm seeing being submitted and processed, we are seeing some higher expenditures, especially in the police department. That is mostly overtime. We have seen on both the city and the sewer has seen a dramatic increase in general liability and damage claims that have been submitted. On the sewer side, I understand it's more than likely related to sewer backups into homes, etc. So that is being looked at. I have talked to risk management just to verify that things are being categorized correctly. So we will stay on top of that. Overall, for the city, we are still projecting a surplus for the year of approximately, at this point, $1.2 million. And that is driven primarily by the excess pilot funds that came into the city based on the new calculation that was anticipated but not known to the definite numbers during the budget cycle, so it was not included in the budget. So that is an upside to the city. From the sewer perspective, you can see that revenues are the same story. We are in line. We are not projecting any variances there. On page 9 there, you will see that the health and liability insurance is well over the projected budget. And again, we are looking into that. Some of the lines, for example, the FICA and the pension, some of that is being reported in new lines based on the way ADP is handling numbers. So we have made adjustments for that in the forecast. At this point, given what I'm seeing, I'm projecting a slight deficit in the sewer fund. So we will stay on top of that. I have reached out to the town engineer to see if we can get an understanding of everything that's going on there. Allentown Fire Department, another good story. They are projecting, or we are projecting, a surplus for the year. That again being driven by the higher than budgeted revenues coming in through the pilot calculation. You'll see that we have put down a deposit on the new fire truck for Allentown that is reflective in the capital outlay line. That was in the plan, in the budget. Revenues, we are expecting a FEMA, the grant to be refunded to the city once all of that information is compiled and sent to them for reimbursement. The final 2 pages of the report are what we have started providing to the city council. It is the balance sheet funds for the ARPA funding, the money that has been received by the city. You can see the revenue coming in. There are no expenditures against that. This will be provided on a monthly basis to the council and to the MARB. We did complete the interim filing for the federal government that was submitted on January 27th. And we are in the process of putting in the required information for the state so that we can meet the February 15th deadline for the CRF filing.
Thank you, that was one of my questions. Any questions? I don't have any questions regarding the financials. Any questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have a question. Frank, regarding the I guess, claims for with sewer lines, do you know how that's vetted through for liability? I mean, there's pretty broad protections that municipalities have under state statute, but certainly the lateral lines, the ones that come off the main to the person's house, are basically the person. The city would have zero liability, unless they,
Correct.
Rip through or something.
Correct. And so you're exactly right. And I've had some initial discussions with the risk manager. I need to follow back up with our, one of the things that we did in Fairfield when I was part of WPCA there was we actually took the policy to deny the sewer backups as long as we could provide as a town the necessary documentation that says that we're making an effort to clean the lines of roots and of debris. So as long as there's a good faith effort to clear those lines, I'm not an attorney, but I would assume that we could eliminate some of these claims. So I have a note to circle back with the city engineer to see if there's a program in place around maintenance schedules on the sewer lines, and if not, to see what we need to do to actually put that into place. I'm sure that would drive the claims down as long as we can maintain these lines correctly.
Are you talking about the main lines, Frank?
Yeah, the main lines. So if there's, what we were seeing was some of the backups that we did pay out on were because of roots that had gotten into the lines themselves. It was creating a backflow into the house. And so as long as it's the main line...
The main line out of the street?
Yes, as long as it's the main line...
The lateral line that goes from the main to the house?
No, the lateral line is the homeowner's responsibility.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay.
And what most people don't know, and I didn't find out until I was actually on that commission, is that sewer backups are not covered by your own homeowner's insurance unless you have a separate policy, which only costs like $60 a year.
Wow. All right, any other questions? All right, that concludes our discussion with West Haven. Well, excuse me, there is one other thing that was included in the packet, and that was Tom Hamilton's request for the motor vehicle brand list. I wanted to bring to your attention that that was included, Tom.
Yes, I see that, thanks.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had any questions regarding that, if you're all set.
Good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then that concludes our West Haven discussion. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Good day.
Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is
Under the ordinance.